Have you ever wondered what actually happened after the floodwaters receded? Sure, everyone knows about Noah's Ark, but what came next is 1,000 times more mind-blowing. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on humanity's best-kept secrets from the post-flood era, the episodes that forever altered the trajectory of human history. Buckle up, because what you're about to discover will completely shatter everything you thought you knew about civilization's true beginnings. We're talking about events so powerful they reshaped the very fabric of human existence. Stories so incredible they've been hidden in plain sight for thousands of years. Picture this exact moment. Your eyes flutter open and you're one of just 8 humans left breathing on planet Earth. Everything that once existed has been reduced to absolute silence and endless mud. No towering metropolises, no bustling highways, no single trace of the advanced civilization that existed before. Just the haunting, overwhelming echo of divine judgment reverberating across a completely reset world. This was the stark, terrifying reality confronting Noah and his family when the floodwaters finally retreated after months of devastation. The world they knew was gone forever. But here's where the story gets absolutely fascinating. Their first instinct wasn't to build emergency shelters or desperately hunt for food to survive. Their immediate, urgent action was constructing an altar and presenting costly sacrifices to God. Think about that for a moment. These people had just survived the most catastrophic event in human history. They were probably exhausted, traumatized, facing an uncertain future, yet their priority was worship. Their first thought was gratitude. This tells us everything about the kind of people God chose to restart humanity. What transpired at that simple altar changed the rules of existence forever. God caught the sweet fragrance of the sacrifice rising up to heaven, and in that moment he made a decision that would shape humanity's entire future. Never again will I curse the ground because of mankind, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. Do you fully grasp the enormous magnitude of this promise? After completely erasing the previous human race, wiping out millions of people in the most decisive act of judgment ever recorded, God chooses to establish a radically different type of relationship with the survivors. This wasn't just divine forgiveness or a second chance. This was a total, complete renewal of the covenant between heaven and earth. Here's the part that nobody ever tells you about. The very first words God spoke in the post-flood world were these: "Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth." But this time, these seemingly familiar words carried completely different weight and meaning than before. This wasn't simply an echo or repetition of what he'd originally told Adam in the Garden of Eden. This was humanity's genuine second chance, but now with the terrifying experience of divine judgment burned permanently into their genetic memory. Noah and his sons knew firsthand the devastating price of disobedience, and with that sobering knowledge, they had to somehow rebuild the entire world from scratch. The weight of responsibility on their shoulders was unimaginable. They weren't just starting a family, they were restarting the human race. Every decision they made would echo through generations. Every choice would shape the future of civilization itself. If you think rainbows are just pretty weather phenomena that show up after rainstorms, you're completely and totally wrong. The rainbow represents the first visible contractual sign between God and humanity in all of recorded history. This wasn't decoration, this was documentation. In the original Hebrew language, the word for bow is identical to the term used for war bow, the weapon used in battle. God was literally hanging up his weapon in the sky, declaring eternal peace with mankind. It was as if the supreme celestial warrior announced to the entire universe, "My bow no longer points toward earth in judgment, but toward heaven in promise." But here's the absolutely incredible detail that changes everything. This covenant didn't depend whatsoever on human behavior or performance. It wasn't conditional on our goodness or faithfulness. It was completely unilateral, based solely on God's sovereign decision and character. Even knowing full well that human hearts would continue being evil, he deliberately chose to commit himself to preserving life on earth. "I establish my covenant with you. Never again will all flesh be destroyed by floodwaters." This single declaration transformed the sky from being a symbol of terrifying judgment into becoming a canvas of infinite hope and promise. Every single time we see a rainbow arcing across the sky, we're witnessing God's personal signature on an eternal contract. It's not celestial decoration designed to make us feel good. It's divine documentation, proving God keeps his word forever. That rainbow is God saying, "I remember my promise and I will never break it." After the flood, something radically and permanently shifted in the relationship between human beings and the animal kingdom. For the first time in all of history, God introduced instinctive animal fear of humans into the natural order. The fear and dread of you will be upon every beast of the earth, every bird of the air, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the fish of the sea. This wasn't a curse or punishment, but actually a protective measure designed for survival. In the post-flood world, where survival would be exponentially more difficult and dangerous, this instinctive fear would prevent humans from being constantly attacked and killed by wild beasts seeking territory or food. Here comes something that forever changed human nutrition and dietary habits. Everything that moves and lives shall be food for you. Just as I gave you the green plants, I now give you everything. For the first time in human history, people received explicit divine permission to eat meat and consume animal products. Before the catastrophic flood, all of humanity had been strictly vegetarian. The original diet in Eden consisted entirely of fruits, vegetables, grains, and plant-based foods. Now, facing a completely devastated ecosystem with severely limited plant resources, God graciously expanded the available dietary options to include animals. But this permission didn't come without important restrictions and boundaries. But flesh with its life, that is its blood, you shall not eat. This prohibition established an eternal principle that reverberates through history. Life is sacred and belongs exclusively to God. Blood, as the physical symbol and carrier of life itself, had to be treated with absolute reverence and respect. This seemingly simple rule about blood actually prepared the groundwork for something even more important and far-reaching: the formal introduction of capital punishment into human society. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed, for in the image of God he made man. This wasn't about revenge or human cruelty. This was about establishing the infinite value and sacred worth of human life. Because humans bear God's image, taking human life is the ultimate crime that demands the ultimate punishment. This principle would echo through legal systems for millennia. Just when you think this incredible story can't possibly get more intense or dramatic, the first major scandal of the new era appears. Noah himself, the righteous man who built the ark, the preacher of righteousness who walked faithfully with God for decades, protagonizes a shocking moral fall that reveals the human heart fundamentally hadn't changed despite witnessing God's judgment. Noah planted a vineyard, successfully made wine, and then got so completely drunk that he ended up lying naked and unconscious in his tent. The man who had been righteous and blameless in his generation, the preacher who had warned the world about coming judgment, now lay vulnerable, exposed, and humiliated. This image is brutally honest about human nature. Even the most righteous people can experience devastating moral failures. Even those who walk closest to God can stumble and fall. The flood had changed the external world, but it hadn't changed the internal condition of the human heart. The reactions of Noah's 3 sons to their father's shameful condition revealed their true characters and would determine the destiny of entire nations and civilizations. Ham saw his father's nakedness, and instead of covering him with compassion, he went and mockingly told his brothers about their father's humiliating condition. But Shem and Japheth responded completely differently. They took a garment, carefully walked backwards into the tent so they wouldn't see their father's nakedness, and gently covered him while preserving his dignity. They chose honor over humiliation, restoration over exposure. The contrast between these responses is absolutely devastating. While some people instinctively expose others' failures and shame, others instinctively cover and restore. While some people mock and gossip about others' weaknesses, others protect and heal. This fundamental difference in character would literally determine the destiny of entire nations and people groups throughout history. When Noah finally awoke from his drunken stupor and understood exactly what had happened, he pronounced a prophetic curse on Canaan, who was Ham's son. "Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers." This wasn't arbitrary anger or petty revenge. This was prophetic declaration that would be literally fulfilled generations later when the Canaanite peoples became persistent enemies of God's chosen people. What began with just 3 men and their fundamentally different responses to their father's failure would eventually transform into the incredible cultural and ethnic diversity of the entire known world. Genesis chapter 10 presents us with what scholars call the Table of Nations, essentially history's very first comprehensive ethnographic map. Japheth became the father of the northern peoples, eventually populating vast regions that we would later recognize as Europe and significant parts of Asia. His name literally means enlarge, and exactly that happened throughout history. God enlarged his territory and influence far beyond what anyone could have imagined. But before we continue this incredible journey, I want you to share this video with someone you truly care about. Our greatest mission here on earth is spreading the Lord's word and helping people understand these amazing truths. Did you know that many people lack spiritual knowledge simply because they don't have access to adequate biblical content? Send this video to that WhatsApp group where people are searching for meaning, or post it on your Facebook timeline where friends and family can see it. I'm absolutely sure you won't regret helping spread these life-changing truths. And if you're genuinely enjoying videos like this one and want to see more deep biblical content, please comment below, "I want more." That way I'll know if you really appreciate this type of content. And I'll definitely bring you similar new videos exploring the incredible secrets hidden in Scripture. Ham became the father of peoples who would eventually inhabit vast regions of Africa and crucial parts of the Middle East. From his lineage descended the mighty Egyptians, the Canaanites, the Cushites, and numerous other powerful civilizations that would play major roles in biblical history. Shem was the chosen lineage, the one specially selected by God, from whom would eventually descend the Hebrews, Arameans, and many other Near Eastern peoples. His name literally means name or renown, and this wasn't coincidental. God specifically chose this particular lineage to be the channel through which he would transmit his revelation to the world. Here's the absolutely fascinating detail that most people completely miss. God genuinely wanted diversity and variety among human cultures, but he definitely didn't want chaos or confusion. He deliberately allowed and even encouraged multiple distinct cultures and languages to develop, but all of them would share a common origin and fundamental human nature. The coming dispersion wasn't going to be punishment for disobedience, but was actually part of God's original plan to fill the earth with diverse but related peoples. When it seemed like humanity had finally learned its lesson from the devastating flood and was ready to cooperate with God's plan, something happened that proved beyond doubt that human arrogance and pride have absolutely no limits. In the fertile plains of Shinar, Noah's descendants made a collective decision to build something that would audaciously challenge heaven itself. "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top reaches to heaven, and let us make a name for ourselves." This seemingly innocent declaration actually reveals the project's true heart and motivation. This wasn't about impressive architecture or engineering achievement. This was about raw arrogance and human pride. They weren't seeking to reach God or honor him. They were seeking to replace him and make themselves equal to him. But there was another, equally sinister motive behind this massive construction project. So that we won't be scattered across the face of the earth. They were deliberately and rebelliously disobeying God's clear mandate to fill the earth and spread out across the globe. They wanted unity and centralization, but they wanted it completely without God's involvement or blessing. The Tower of Babel represented humanity's first organized attempt at building a godless utopia, a perfect society that would function without any need for divine intervention or guidance. It was the ancient version of modern secular humanism. God didn't destroy their impressive tower with dramatic fire from heaven or devastating earthquakes. His intervention was far more subtle but infinitely more powerful and effective. "Come, let us go down and confuse their language, so that they will not understand each other's speech." In a single supernatural instant, what had seemed invincible and unstoppable became completely impossible to continue. Without clear communication, there could be no coordinated project. Without mutual understanding, there could be no unified effort. Without shared language, there could be no tower reaching heaven. The confusion of languages was actually an incredible act of divine mercy that prevented humanity from destroying itself through unchecked pride and rebellion. God scattered them before their collective arrogance could lead to even greater judgment. So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city. What these prideful men had desperately wanted to prevent was accomplished by direct divine intervention. The amazing linguistic and cultural diversity of our world was born from this single moment of divine action. After the dramatic confusion of Babel, when it seemed like God had completely finished with humanity as any kind of collective project and was simply managing scattered tribes, something absolutely extraordinary happened. In a thoroughly pagan city called Ur of the Chaldeans, deep in Mesopotamian territory, God found one man who was genuinely willing to listen and respond to his voice. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you." This command to Abram was completely revolutionary and unprecedented. God didn't tell him exactly where to go, didn't provide a detailed itinerary or timeline, didn't offer guarantees about what he would find. He simply asked for complete trust and obedient walking into the unknown. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. Here we see the direct, intentional contrast with the Tower of Babel incident. While those rebellious people desperately wanted to make themselves a great name through their own efforts, God tells Abraham that he himself will give him a great name through divine grace and power. But the incredible promise didn't end with Abraham personally. And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. This single sentence reveals the heart of God's entire plan. He would use one man, one family, one nation to become a channel of blessing that would eventually reach every single people group on earth. This is where the story gets absolutely amazing. God wasn't abandoning the world after Babel. He was implementing a completely different strategy. Instead of dealing with humanity as one massive group, he would work through one specially chosen lineage that would become his vehicle for reaching everyone else. So Abram went, as the Lord had told him. These wonderfully simple words actually contain extraordinary spiritual power. Abraham didn't wait around for human confirmations or seek visible guarantees about the future. He didn't conduct feasibility studies or consult with advisors. He simply trusted God's word, packed up his entire life, and started walking toward an unknown destination. Even Abraham, who would become known throughout history as the father of faith, made serious mistakes that almost completely destroyed God's promise before it could be fulfilled. When severe famine struck the promised land, instead of consulting God about what to do, Abraham decided to take matters into his own hands and go down to Egypt independently. Fearing that the Egyptians would kill him in order to take his incredibly beautiful wife Sarah, Abraham asked her to tell people she was his sister rather than his wife. Technically, this wasn't a complete lie, since Sarah was actually his half-sister, but it was definitely truth told with deceptive intent. Sarah was taken into Pharaoh's royal palace as a potential wife, and Abraham received considerable wealth in exchange: livestock, servants, and precious goods. But God powerfully intervened by sending devastating plagues on Pharaoh's entire household, making it clear that something was seriously wrong. The pagan king ended up confronting the patriarch directly. "What have you done to me? Why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she was your sister?" Abraham was forced to leave Egypt humiliated and exposed, but not destroyed. He returned to Canaan with significantly more material wealth than before, but more importantly, with a painful lesson permanently carved into his soul. Genuine faith isn't just for days of promise and prosperity, but also for days of famine and difficulty. Back in Canaan, Abraham faced a completely new challenge that would test his character in a different way. His nephew Lot, who had faithfully traveled with him all the way from Ur, now also possessed considerable wealth and large flocks. The land simply couldn't support both of their extensive operations in the same area. Instead of imposing his authority as the older relative or claiming his rights as the one who had received God's promise, Abraham graciously gave Lot the first choice. "Isn't the whole land before you? Let's part company. If you go to the left, I'll go to the right. If you go to the right, I'll go to the left." This generous attitude reveals a heart that wasn't desperately attached to specific geography or material advantage, but was firmly anchored in God's promise and character. Abraham understood that God's blessing didn't depend on getting the best piece of real estate. Lot made his choice based purely on what he could see with his physical eyes, not on spiritual considerations. He saw the lush Jordan plain, incredibly fertile and well-watered like the garden of the Lord, and headed toward the prosperous cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. His decision was commercially intelligent and financially advantageous, but spiritually dangerous and morally compromising. Immediately after this separation, God spoke directly to Abraham with renewed and expanded promises. "Look around from where you are, to the north and south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever." Abraham's act of generosity wasn't a loss or sacrifice that left him worse off. It was actually seed for receiving even greater promises from God. His willingness to let go opened the door for God to give him far more than he could have obtained through selfish insistence on his rights. When he least expected it, Abraham was suddenly forced to transform from peaceful nomad into military commander. A powerful alliance of kings had attacked the region during a war, and Lot had been captured along with all his possessions and family members. Abraham didn't hesitate for a moment. Family loyalty demanded immediate action. With exactly 318 trained servants from his household, Abraham courageously pursued the victorious kings who had superior numbers and military equipment. He strategically attacked them at night when they weren't expecting counterattack and achieved complete victory, recovering not only Lot and his family but all the other captives and goods that had been taken. His military strategy was absolutely perfect. His execution was flawless, and his success was total. This revealed yet another dimension of Abraham's character. He wasn't just a man of faith and generosity, but also a man of decisive action and courageous leadership when circumstances demanded it. Returning triumphantly from battle, Abraham was met by one of the most mysterious and significant figures in the entire Bible, Melchizedek, who was simultaneously king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. This enigmatic character, who appears suddenly with no recorded genealogy or background, offered bread and wine to Abraham in what appears to be a ceremonial meal. We have an incredible spiritual resource that I want to share with you, Paths of Revelation, a comprehensive book designed to help you understand biblical prophecies and strengthen your personal faith. You'll find the link in the first comment below this video. Please read it carefully, share it with others who are seeking truth, and use it to prepare yourself spiritually for everything that's coming in these last days. Don't wait for another disaster or crisis to force you to look up and seek God. Today is the acceptable day. Today is the appointed time to act with genuine faith. Strengthen yourself daily in God's Word. Go deeper in personal prayer and deliberately surround your life with people who are also genuinely seeking God with all their hearts. The time for casual Christianity is over. We need deep, authentic faith for what's ahead. Melchizedek blessed Abraham with these powerful words. Blessed be Abram by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High who delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abraham, immediately recognizing this priest-king's legitimate spiritual authority, gave him a full tithe of everything he had recovered in battle. This remarkable encounter actually prefigures and points toward the eternal priesthood of Jesus Christ, who the New Testament tells us is a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. This wasn't just a random meeting, it was a prophetic preview of ultimate spiritual realities. Despite all of God's incredible promises and supernatural interventions, Abraham still remained completely childless as the years passed. His anguish and confusion were absolutely real and deeply personal. Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless, and the one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus? Abraham was essentially saying, God, your promises sound wonderful, but I don't even have a son to inherit them. How can I become a great nation when I don't have any children at all? God brought Abraham outside his tent under the star-filled night sky and said, Look up at the sky and count the stars. If indeed you can count them, so shall your offspring be. Abraham, already well advanced in age and facing the biological impossibility of having children, chose to believe God anyway, and it was credited to him as righteousness. This is where we see the essence of biblical faith, not believing because you can see how something will work out, but believing precisely because you can't see how it's possible. Abraham's faith wasn't based on favorable circumstances, but on God's character and promises. To confirm and seal this promise, God ordered Abraham to prepare a formal covenant sacrifice, a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old goat, a 3-year-old ram, a dove, and a young pigeon. Abraham carefully cut the larger animals in half and arranged the pieces, as was absolutely customary in ancient blood covenants between parties. When the sun set, Abraham fell into a supernatural deep sleep, accompanied by terrifying darkness. In that darkness there appeared a smoking firepot with a blazing torch that passed between the pieces. Only God himself passed between the divided animals, dramatically indicating that the fulfillment of this covenant depended entirely and exclusively on God's faithfulness, not on Abraham's performance. 10 long years passed after this covenant ceremony, and Sarah still hadn't conceived a single child. The promise seemed increasingly impossible with each passing year, and Sarah finally made a decision that would change everything and create complications lasting for millennia. The Lord has kept me from having children. Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Abraham agreed to Sarah's proposal and united with Hagar, their Egyptian servant. When Hagar successfully became pregnant, she began to despise and look down on Sarah, and Sarah responded by treating her so harshly that Hagar finally fled into the wilderness to escape. In the wilderness, the angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a spring and gave her specific instructions to return to Sarah, but also gave her an incredible promise. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. Hagar obediently returned and gave birth to Ishmael. Abraham was 86 years old when this son was born, and although Ishmael was definitely blood of his blood and genuinely his child, he wasn't the promised son that God had specifically promised. Ishmael was the fruit of human impatience and human effort, not the result of God's supernatural timing and intervention. 13 more years passed in waiting and wondering, and when Abraham reached 99 years old, God appeared to him again with renewed promises. I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless.